Hey everyone, welcome to episode 126 of the Ceres podcast, hosted by me, Stelios, the founder and director of Ceres Pure Food Innovation. Today, I'm joined by Stefano Nella from Nella Cutlery Services. Before we go on though, we just need to cover a few Ceres related bits. If you've been on our online store recently, you will notice that the potato preparation is now back in stock, but it has undergone a big transformation. We listened to all the feedback and we wanted to see how we could make this better. We've changed the packaging to some really nifty 1 kilo bottles with a narrow opening. The problem with the old packaging, as you know, was it was a big bucket with a very large opening and it would absorb lots of moisture from the wet rooms and then it would stink a bit. But now we've got on top of that and we've also tweaked it by adding anti-clumping technology, which will keep the formula flowing. As ever, the formula still reduces excess starch and prevents oxidization to keep giving you consistent chips time after time. And on top of all that, it's still absolutely great value. Go online and you can see the great deals to be had there. If you're on our mailing list, you'll know that we've been upgrading our fulfillment infrastructure. Our first room has now been completely cleaned, and as I speak, the racking is being fitted. The whole benefit to this is that we hope that 99% of all our orders moving forward, once we're all up and running, will be delivered next day. If you order it before 12, you'll get it next day, whether it's with FedEx or a shipping company or pallet courier, whichever, it will be with you next day. And that's our promise. We will sort of give you more information on that when the time is right, but the goal is that. To see what we've been up to and how any of our solutions can help you, visit worldofceres.com. To keep you in the loop, why not join our mailing list? We'll have the link below in the show notes. Just click on there. You'll get an email once or twice a month. There's always some offers in there, but you keep ahead of the news. To also see what's on our website or what our solutions could do for you, visit worldofceres.com/shop. At the moment, most courier orders are next day and palletized goods are a 3 to 4 day turnaround. Joining me on episode 126 of the Ceres podcast is Stefano Nella from Nella Cutlery Services. Nella Cutlery Services have been sharpening knives for over 120 years. Yes, 120 years. I absolutely love the fact that Nella has been in business for this long. As you can tell, I'm talking to a descendant. Ceres was founded in 2007 and I can't imagine it being around in 120 years' time. But who knows, anything can happen. I love how not only are the Nellas sharpening knives, but as you will hear, their relatives across the globe in Canada and America are doing exactly the same thing. I don't want to ruin it all by chatting about it here. Stefano was so kind with his time, so you're better off just listening to him. One last thing though before I go. If you have any feedback for the Ceres podcast or would you like to suggest a guest, just get in touch with me on any of the social media platforms or email me at stelios@worldofceres.com. I absolutely loved talking to Stefano, and I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I did. Stefano, welcome to the Ceres podcast, mate.
Hi, Stelios. Good to speak again. How's things?
Yeah, not bad, mate. Thank you for your time today. I know how busy you are.
No worries. No, it's a pleasure.
So for those that don't know you, you are from Nella Cutlery, and I guess many would know, especially in the hospitality industry, what Nella Cutlery does. I would imagine it's one of those things that people don't give a lot of thought to, although we do, you know. But then also, I've spoken to 3 or 4 customers this week of mine about Nella Cutlery, and they wouldn't be without it. And, they are literally adamant. This is a service that is, it's big. It's a big deal to them. So, well done to that. So
yeah, no, thank you. Actually, it's definitely right. It's something that is overlooked, and people forget about us. And then when they open their doors, it's like, oh, Steph, we need the knives. So knife sharpening is an important trade, and we're glad our customers feel that way.
So firstly, tell me a little bit about how the founding. I love a good founding story. I was telling you just before. I founded a company of my own, no way near what you guys are. But I think everyone starts somewhere. So I know we've got similarities of the immigrant story.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the founding of Nella Cutlery.
Well, it goes back a long way. We're actually celebrating our 121st year this year. So 1901
Wow.
was when we were established. And I lose track, you see, because I'm the fifth generation. So I make that my great great grandfather. He walked over in the late 1800s. So it was I believe it was, don't quote me on the exact date, but late 1880s, early 1890s, and it was a very different world back then. So he walked. It took him a whole year, and he wasn't a knife sharpener at this point. He was a farmer, or a farmer, trained sort of slash origin, and he sharpened tools on his way, whether it be knives or lawn mowers or whatever it shears, scissors, that kind of thing, and sort of plotted his way across Europe to get over here into London, and it was very it was run very differently back then. So the ports weren't your Dover to Calais. He actually came into the Thames, and we settled in Deptford, or he settled in Deptford a whole year later, and so our origins are from southeast London, and that's where we remain today. And what a journey that must have been in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And then in 1901 was officially when Nella Cutlery was established.
So that is pretty impressive. And to think that, I wonder, you do wonder sometimes, did he ever think that this company would be going this long after? Because it's well past his thought process, you'd imagine, past anybody's thought process. I can't think of what's going to be happening to my family 5 generations from now. I just barely imagine what it's like when I'm gone. And I'm not that old. So it just makes you think, like, how amazing that story, that successively over all those years, the business has just carried on plodding forward, just going forward. And he probably never saw it as a business, maybe back then. He probably saw it as a way of feeding his family,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
and that was it. Whereas now it's truly a multinational business, and we'll go into the deeper details, but just the fact that you guys are in the UK, you then serve parts of Europe. It just makes you think, like, if he ever knew that this was ever going to be a thing,
No, it's crazy, and you're exactly right. I think it started as like any other tradesman, really, and he was there to earn a living, and it was what he knew, and sort of way back then, we weren't just a knife sharpening company. He sharpened anything he could get his hands on. He knew that he knew the trade, right. That was all he knew from sort of his farming days, and the knives took over, in sort of like the middle of the 20th century, and the 50s and whatnot. But before then, it was very much guy on his own, and sharpening whatever he could, and then we sort of stumbled across our knife sharpening service later on in life, and obviously that's what led us to where we are today. So no, it's pretty amazing where we've got to, and the longer we've been established, the more sort of recognized we are. So it's very much, we deal with word of mouth, and chefs or people moving from kitchen to kitchen, and that takes a long time to establish a network like that, and we're very grateful of that.
I guess in some ways we do have that similarity between Sarah's and Nella, where if you're supplying a chef in a certain restaurant and they move to another restaurant, you not only hopefully carry on supplying the one that moves in, but also you go to the place where they've gone to as well. And I think that is a good thing, isn't it? Well, if you do your job right, which you guys, yeah,
that's a great thing, and that's how historically years ago, we grew our business, and it's really really important aspect that we don't undervalue that, and we want to look after everyone just as well as we possibly can, because the minute they move, we'd love to to have a new client as well. So yeah, we pride ourselves on that, and it's done us good
Good.
for a long time now.
So where are you guys? Where's your head office then? Where are you based?
So we're based in Orpington,
Yeah,
which is
Kent.
biggest area, southeast London, really.
Oh,
Bromley,
right, is it? Okay.
yeah, Kent is
Yeah.
Greater London, so it's on the cusp of Kent and you know just outside southeast London. So Bromley is the sort of main town near us, but we're just outside in a place called Orpington, which serves us well. We've gradually moved out over the years. Like I said, we settled in Deptford a long time ago. Moved out to Brockley.
Hmm.
From Brockley, Brockley. We're in Brockley in the 50s, 60s. We've got some great old photos of our old workshop there, actually. And we ended up in Hither Green, which is again southeast London. And then fairly recently, we moved to Orpington in about 2015, I think, give or
Hmm.
take. So
Yeah.
7 or 8 years ago.
So, and I guess those movements were almost, I guess, constant growth as well, bigger units, I guess.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, it was natural growth, and
Hmm.
um, you know, the more expensive London gets, it was a natural progression to move out. Kind of it reminds me
Mm.
of like when you're downsizing a house. You tend to move out of the city
Hmm.
because you can just get more for your money. And we naturally sort of moved out because it was getting expensive to be around there. And to be honest, as the transport links in London get better, and where we started to provide a service on a larger geographical area, being near the M25 and the A20, A21, that kind of area, was became quite valuable to us. So it
Yeah.
was just a natural progression. So it was kind of a few things that led us that way for sure.
I guess the quicker you can get in and out of a city is better. So if you're in London, it's going to, yeah, you're right. If you're just going to London areas, but if you're servicing a lot of outside London areas, it's a bit of a pain, whereas if you can just jump in, do your rounds, go back out, or just jump on the M25, M1, whatever,
Yeah,
M11, you're just all over the country, aren't you? So
if only if you beat rush hour.
only if you beat rush hour, of course. Well, that's the game all day long. I was driving to our new warehouse yesterday, and the wife wanted to come with me to time it, and it took the longest it's ever took to get from home. And
Really?
I'm just like, it's just because she was sitting in the car. It's just standard, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's my normal day-to-day work.
So, but that's not your. So, tell me about your other depots in the UK. How many other depots have you got in the UK?
So we've got three, and we've got one in Luton,
Yeah.
Birmingham, and Leeds. So
Okay.
they're all fully like self-maintained
Hmm.
facilities, standalone businesses as such. I mean, we're one business for sure, but they have a full sharpening facility, factory, and what we tend to do from there is that's at the spine of the country, and it gives us uh, a scope to veer off from there and cover the whole UK. So we have what we call some satellite drivers that, they're generally dotted around in the major cities you'd expect. So your Bristol, your Cardiff, Edinburgh, Manchester, Liverpool, all those types of places. And once a week or twice a week, they report into their nearest depot and stock up. So we try and stay local. All our drivers are local to the areas they deliver, and that's important to us because you build up a good relationship with the customers. Everyone likes a local lad and a friendly face. Um, so that's how we service the UK from those other
Yeah.
depots.
And how many employees now?
We're up to about 230.
230.
Yeah,
And what's it been like sort of keeping, like with everything going on at the minute, every business I talk to, every business, I don't even understand it no more, but before it was just hospitality, but now it's every business I talk to is finding it hard to get good team members. How are you guys finding it?
it's been, especially the last couple of years, it's been a real struggle, which I'd imagine there couldn't be many people that would say a different thing to us, or have had different experiences recently. But it's been a real difficult situation for us over the last couple of years for obvious reasons. But we're getting there. I mean, we pride ourselves on some of the employees that we have had for a long time. We've got I couldn't count the amount of employees that we have over 10 years, 15 years, and some even 20 to 30 years, believe it or
Wow.
not. So, they've really gone through thick and thin with us, grown with us, and grown up the ladder as well, into management positions, because we're such a niche business that experience is key, and as a family business as well, you you really need a loyal team behind you. So uh, they help us, they aid that, and look after the teams that they have. And to be honest, it's nice because it gives our say entry level staff a potential career plan. They can see that that person's been there for 20 years. It's not just a dead end job if you knuckle down and give it your best shot. But we certainly wouldn't be where we are without those people, and they do ease the burden on getting in the new recruits. And
I
what,
guess also, if you've just started at Nella Knives and you've got something about you and you want Nella Cutlery, and you want to move forward, and you think to yourself, 1 minute, the sign above the door says Nella, the family that run it are still Nella, the staff have been here for 30 years. That sort of makes you think you're right. There is a there is a trajectory there that someone can jump onto. That's a real good benefit that you guys probably have that many other companies probably just don't have.
yeah, well, it there's certain companies out there, that you can progress in. Of course, you can, but you know, you're dealing with some important decision makers, and if you're doing well, we value that, and
Mm,
we won't forget that. You're not certain people, they're a really important part of our team, and in certain larger companies, you could be seen as a number doing a job, in certain businesses that's the case, but we feel that there can be more to it than that if you want to progress, and you can make of it what you want. Every manager we have, give or take one maybe, um, started at the bottom and worked their way up. And there's probably 3 or 4 layers now, and they all started there, and hopefully more will come, and the bigger we get, touch wood, we'll need more like that as well.
yeah. So at the sort of at the top end, let's say there's you, your dad, your brother, and then you got cousins and sisters. Or explain to me what it's like at the sort of the top of the tree. Who's making those decisions every day?
So my dad Mark is managing director. He's been doing it his whole life really, since he was about 15. So I lose track, but that's got to be 30 years plus. And me and my brother Mario, we sort of run the day-to-day running of the company. We've got our own departments, our own depots, that kind of thing. And my two sisters, I've got three. One doesn't work with us, but Sasha and Naomi have a department as well. So one runs a sales team, one runs sort of like the accounts team, and then we've got a couple of key members as well that have worked for us for a long time. Julie is a lady that's worked for my dad for over 20 years now, and she generally is in charge of the whole office. She's one of the directors as well, so she's running a substantial team there. And then there's other sort of management layers that sort of just below that run their own depots and that kind of thing, and generally. They've been with us a long time as well, and help us through the day-to-day running for sure.
I'm intrigued to know, how do you and your brother have a clear understanding of who does what and where it ends, and how, because you never stop overlapping, but what you do when a little bit of overlap happens. I worked for a long time with my brother, absolutely hated it. We've probably only just started getting on again.
Yeah.
So some businesses really thrive, do well as family businesses and family units, and others don't. So what do you think, are you guys fully aware of? You must have a system that works and maybe needs a little bit of rejigging every now and then.
Yeah, look, we've worked together. My brother's a bit older than me, so he's been in the company over 15 years, and I'm coming up to 12, or 11, 12. And it takes that time to form like those boundaries. But he's my brother, but we're kind of like best pals as well, you know. So there aren't, apart from my wife, that, you know, there's no one I know better than him, and generally we know how each other's going to feel about a certain scenario. So you tend to we're very good at gauging when to push back and when to sort of let it slide. So if we weren't like that, if it wasn't a bit of give and take, then there'd be some serious butting heads. And I've heard stories of family businesses where that certainly is the case. But you know, we try and leave each other to their own departments, and of course we're always leaning on each other for support, advice. You know, he might have a slightly different opinion, and sometimes when you're in the thick of things, it's it's good to get that second opinion from an outsider. You know, looking in, and you might have missed something, or you know, potentially would do it differently next time once you've sort of you know, spoken to each other about it. So we've struck up a good relationship there, and you know, he's not here today, but hopefully he'd say the same as me.
I guess it's like, I guess it's just having a clear understanding of, like you said, you need to understand how he feels about something before you sort of say it as well. You understand each other, and I think you've got to have that healthy amount of pushback where it's not an argument.
Yeah.
And this goes with any relationship, whether it's, you know, co-worker or brother or whatever, you know, in business, that is. And I'd imagine one of the biggest things is compromise, knowing that actually you've got to sort of step back sometimes and not just go in head over heels.
Well, agreed, 100%. And I feel when you know it's coming from a good place, as in any of our opinions or what we're discussing is purely to benefit the company, and we feel, you know, very passionately about that. If you ever you know, catch up with my dad, Stelios, it's his sixth child. You know, it's a real close to home.
Well, I guess you came after the business. So in some
Yeah,
ways, yeah, without being rude.
exactly.
And I guess, well, you know, one thing, if I was with your dad, and I'll ask this to you as well, it's like, you know, and I probably go on a lot about this, but it's the sentimentality of having a business that's been in the family for so long. You know, do you feel this sense of this responsibility? You know, that, you know, like Sarah's is 13 years old. You know, it doesn't have my name above the door either. So,
Yeah.
you know, if for whatever reason, you know, I got bought out, I'm not going to worry because it's not Stelios's batter company that went bust or taken over or whatever. Whereas you guys have something above that door that you all take home with you. You sign the checks, it's Nella at the end of it. So do you feel this sense of responsibility? You, Mario, your dad, Mark, your sisters, and also other cousins and uncles that were involved in the business?
Yeah, absolutely. You do feel that pressure. I mean, for us, I can only speak for myself. I'm pretty sure I know where sort of my dad and brother and my uncle Emilio, actually, was my dad's partner, who retired recently. But I feel, for me, that I want to make the generation before me proud, and we can carry on that legacy that they left, and, you know, try and push it on in our own way, and look back in 20 years and know that we did a good thing for the Nella journey. You know, like they wanted to do that for their dad and their ancestors. It's difficult to go back to the very first generation from me, not knowing them personally and whatnot. It's obviously quite far removed now, and we're a different business. But certainly that generation before you want to, you know, pick up where they left off and keep pushing, as opposed to sitting on your laurels and you know, coasting, shall we say. We want them to look back and know that, you know, we did a good job as well.
Yeah. Well, I guess so. And I think, you know, you are standing on the shoulders of giants in some ways, you know, and I think you've learned, you know, you constantly learn from their mistakes at the same time and learn also what makes the business great. That's not to say that everyone before you was amazing either. You know, even they would have had their faults to some degree, you know, but again, you know, when you've got a business that's been in business for 121 years, you learn a thing or two, you think, wouldn't you?
Yeah, for sure.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah. You'd like to hope so anyway.
definitely. And
You know,
they pass it down to us, absolutely. And one day hopefully we'll pass on the knowledge as well.
So how did you end up opening? I know you do serve sort of like all of the UK, Ireland, but then you also do some of mainland Europe as well. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so we started operating in Paris about it's probably coming up to 10 years, maybe eight or 9 years ago. Um, we we have a habit of trying to accommodate, you know, anything we can for customers, and we don't like to say no. And one of our restaurant groups said they were opening a site, a couple of sites in Paris. They're London based at them, or they were London based, and they asked us if we could supply them. We didn't have any customers over there, and we thought, you know, they're a very good customer of ours, and we wanted to maintain that relationship and strengthen the relationship, of course. So we took the plunge and decided to go to Paris and deliver these customers. And obviously, we don't. My dad went, and he doesn't speak French, but he learned a thing or two. You know, voulez-vous le couteau, and that was as far as it got. But he went and supplied the knives for this restaurant group, and today we're sitting at about 1,500 customers in Paris now, and it all started from that one, and it was we took it as a bit of a research and development kind of project. We thought we'd test the market and see how it went. And we were conscious that it was a completely different culture, a completely different language, and we didn't know whether the model would work out there. But our client gave us a reason to go and try it, and slowly but surely, it started to work, and it was hard. It was a lot harder than here, because all what we were talking about earlier with the word of mouth, and that was, how we grew. Years ago, we didn't have any of that, so we were starting on a blank canvas, and it did take some hard yards, but we've proved its worth, and that it works. And we're actually just opening next week our first depot, our first factory in France. So that's a really exciting project for us as a company.
So at the moment, or up till next week, it's just been fulfilled by your UK site. Everything's just being sent there.
Yeah, so like we've got a French company, and like I said, we had drivers in certain cities in the
Hmm.
UK. Same thing. We've got a driver in Paris, driver in Lille, driver in Brussels, and it was pre-Brexit. Very easy for us to service them. You just drive across with no complexities at all. Just on the Eurotunnel. It has made things a little bit more difficult recently, which is why we took the plunge and decided to open a facility over there, just so there was less politics involved, and we could crack on and do our job the best we can, rather than sort of getting tied up in all this blue tape that exists now.
And culturally, was it different handling people from scratch over there? Like over here, you've had the benefit of the history, but over there, maybe to some degree, it helps, to sell the idea to people that, but actually you're starting from scratch. These people don't know you, they don't know your culture, you don't know their language. What challenges posed were there?
No, it was difficult. It was really difficult to start with, and for that market, for Paris, the service that we offer, it didn't exist, and it was a very foreign service. And I don't mean that in that we were foreigners, but just that it was unknown. It was different. And um, when we walk into the restaurant, they didn't know who we were. So we did find that tough. But now it's getting to that stage, 8, 9, 10 years later, where the chefs are moving around, and the organic growth is there, just because we've got our foot in the door, and you know we're sort of growing with it, and our customers are moving around. So the culture is starting to change. I mean, we've only got 1,500 customers there, so it's a good little business for us, but it's not massive. So I'm not going to pretend that
Mm.
the whole culture of the
No, no.
Parisian restaurants have changed, but within the sector and within the companies that we supply, it's now normal, which is great.
So And that's a French team. Is there like a French director there, someone that knows the restaurant business a bit more, or is it still family led from over here?
At the moment, it's family led, and that was because it was very easy for us to do that, and it was it was it was a test. It was a guinea pig trial and error scenario, and but for sure, when we open our French depot next week, we'll take things a bit more seriously, and we will, put in place some of the stuff you said there. But no, as it stands, still a relatively small team, and we sort of run it as a little arm's length operation from our London office.
Mm. So when I'd like to say I've been doing loads of research for this podcast. And again, my personality type dictates that I'll probably do 90% of my research over about a week. And then the most important 10%, 10 minutes before joining on this call. And then as I was searching around, just following some social media for Nella, I come across Nella Canada and Nella United States. And I quickly wrote down on my notes, ask about this. So give me some info about how Nella UK or Nella sort of UK Europe, obviously, because it's Europe wide. And what's the difference or similarities between Nella UK, Nella Canada, and Nella United States?
Yeah, so interesting because you'd think from the outside that it was one company. It all looks very similar. It's the same service that's on offer. But a long time ago, when my ancestors came over to London, his brother and sister and other family members just went to different parts of the world, to start a new life, to earn a living. Obviously, it was hard to come by where they were from, and sort of they plotted up all in different countries, mainly in North America, United States and Canada, various cities over there, and yeah, they've run their business, to very similar to us, and they are, we are separate companies, but of course they're providing the same service with the same name above the door, so it all looks very similar, and there are a lot of synergies between the two.
So connected by name, connected by relation. I think you're probably, what did you say, fifth cousins or something now?
Oh yeah, I
Give
mean,
or take, give or
give or
take.
take,
Yeah.
yeah, us
Yeah.
British people wouldn't even know they had cousins that far back, but
Yeah,
it's
true.
it's
It's true.
something like that. Yeah,
Yeah. And then so you're connected by the skill set, obviously, but then that is where it ends. And if anything, you've obviously got the same village when you all go back on holiday every now and then. So you do sort of cross around and see each other. You wouldn't say
definitely.
you're best mates or anything, but you do sort of sit down and have a coffee when you can,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah, for sure.
talk knives.
Yeah, for sure. It's super interesting, and they're doing the same business in us, so same business as us. So we've got a lot to talk about, and if anything, you're trying to learn off each other's experiences, because 9 times out of 10, if they were having a problem, we will have or have had that same problem, and it's yeah, it's nice to talk about it, and nice, give you some fresh ideas, and the way they approach things might be slightly different to us and vice versa. So you can bounce off each other. It's great.
So with the guys in North America, would you say is it again like you one family, or would they have like different states and in different regions where it's different families doing different ones, or again is it one company that runs all of, let's say, America and one that does all of Canada, or have you never give it too much thought?
I I don't know the details. I do know that yeah, they historically started at one, and then similar to kind of what happened where brothers went to all over the world, that we're talking about 120 years ago, or whenever that was, they sort of fairly recently, say in the last 50 years, they divided up states, and his
Hmm.
brother went to Vancouver, the other one went to Seattle. So similar story, and sort of split the business up. Similar in the same type of journey. However, they were one company, and they did just split it into areas. Whereas
Mm.
obviously originally, when it first happened, we we all started on our own. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know much more than that about their
I
bigger.
guess the UK is so much smaller that you don't need all of these different ones. You could one would do nicely. You don't need like again, Seattle's probably very big. I've never been. Different parts of America are so big. I was chatting to someone the other day, and he says Texas is hugely massive.
Hmm.
So I'd imagine you'd need lots of Nellas to do one state alone, wouldn't you?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
yeah.
mean, they would have to run their businesses slightly different to us
Mm.
because I'm sure geographically there'll be routes and areas that they're covering some serious ground. We have a couple in the Highlands of Scotland, up in Inverness, those kind of routes, but I would imagine they have a lot more
Of
like
that,
that than us. Yeah, yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
Yeah, I'd imagine so too. But again, it's just really interesting. And when I saw that, I did sort of suspect that this was the case, that just how your direct descendant came to the UK, theirs went over there, and it's no different to sort of, you know, I guess I know, the Cypriot community, for example, you can sort of tell where they came from in Cyprus and where they ended up over here. So if they're in Bristol now, they were generally from Limassol, and if they're in Birmingham, they came from Larnaca, and because that's where all the boats went and the planes went and so on. So and I guess it's just sort of immigration does certain things and sends people certain ways, doesn't it?
Yeah, for
And it
sure.
just so happens that the Nella sharpen knives.
Yeah, yeah, strange as it does seem strange from the outside, but we stick to what we know.
So one of my bugbears, I spent a long time working in the family fish and chip business, and I visit a lot of shops, is blunt knives. And I know it sounds like I'm setting you up here for a pitch, but the fact is you do knives, so it's obvious. But one thing that's always concerned me about blunt knives is that you acclimatize yourself to putting more pressure on, to make the cut,
Mhm.
the motion. And I've always said that I would rather cut myself with a sharp knife than a blunt knife, because a blunt knife is going to make a hack and go deep, whereas a sharp knife is going to make a nick, and maybe still quite deep, depending on how far you go, but it's clean, it's a
Yeah, for
clean
sure.
cut. So in your mind, what's the importance of having a regularly sharp knife? And I know that obviously sounds like a sales pitch, but you guys know this stuff through and through.
Yeah. No, you're right. And like you said, there's a key health and safety element to the service because a sharp knife's a safe knife, for the exact reasons that you said. And if you do cut yourself, you do want a clean cut that will heal nicely, and don't want it to get infected and have like a jagged cut. I think you said, but so help from a health and safety point of view, that's good. And also, um, you also can be prone to getting a repetitive strain injury as well,
Mhm.
as silly as it may sound, but the knife should be doing the work, not you. And if you're continuously doing the work, applying that pressure, that same motion, it could come back to haunt you, further down the line. But I guess the another really important factor for our knife sharpening service is that the service pays for itself because you'll get more yields out of all of your produce. So if we use a tomato as a basic uh, sample, if you can get 6 slices out of a tomato rather than 4, the person when they're looking at their dinner plate, they're not going to think, oh, that slice is a really thin slice of tomato. They've got their 3 slice on the, as a little side salad for their pasta or whatever it may be. Rather than sort of like the one chunk. So if you can get more out of your yields, now tomato is a very basic example. But if you're talking about, joints of Parma ham or joints of beef or those types of things, you can save a lot of money.
Yeah.
So it will pay for itself. And
I'm not sure why I didn't think you'd go down that route, because that was my next note: yield loss or
yeah.
yield gain. And I was chatting to a customer of yours in Bournemouth, who's a friend of mine, and he said that he's noticed that when the knives are blunt, he loses quite a lot of yield from his
Mhm.
fish filleting, and fish is increasingly expensive, as all protein is. So aside from the tomato, which is also quite expensive at the moment, but it's not an important player unless you're making like something with tomatoes. But it's a side thing, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're cutting protein and
Mhm.
you're losing, I don't know, 6% off your
Yeah.
yield, that's a huge amount of money. A huge amount of money. So I was going to bring up the yield issue, and you brought it up ahead of me. And I just think that, again, it's one of those things that people don't consider. If you haven't got the right knife, you are literally going to be hacking at a
Yeah.
product, putting a lot more effort into it. Strain on your wrist, your joints, your elbows,
Yep.
and then actually going to end up hurting yourself, and you're losing money all at the same time.
Yeah.
So, but again, I think, I see this a lot, and I've made this mistake in the past. You go and get the best knife you can get. You go to wherever it is, Nisbet, so on, and you say, I want to get a global or whatever. But then no one knows how to sharpen it, and I've seen experienced chefs that just don't sharpen knives that well either. And I'm not knocking them. It's just that when it comes to utility, this just makes so much more sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a cliche, but a knife's only as good as the edge that it has. So whether you've got your couple of £100 global knife, and believe it or not, some are more than that.
Yeah.
If it's blunt, it's blunt. It's no good to anyone. So um, you know that's why we're in business. And another key part of our service is we actually supply the knives completely free of charge. So it's included in the sharpening cost. It's a supply and sharpen service. So we want to eliminate that cost of buying that knife. That further down the line, you still have to maintain it anyway if you're not capable yourself, which comes at a cost. So a part of our service is supplying them, and you can eliminate a lot more cost, but know that it's taken care of, and you have less. How can I put it? A global knife would be so important to a chef because it's a lot of money. You don't want to see it out of your sight. Whereas they, I wouldn't say a little bit more careless, but with our knives, it's going to get replaced in a couple of weeks' time, and you can just focus on the job in hand rather than some of the expensive tools that you have.
It's a proper utility rather than a what's the word, like an optional tool, something more of a luxury.
Yeah.
And if people want to use a global or a Wusthof, whatever it is, they're nice enough that they want, that's fine. But obviously they need to know how to keep it in good order. But I'm not being funny though. That is for like top end restaurants, let's say, that are going to have those sort of knives. But the rest of the 95%, there's just no logic, is there?
Yeah.
Surely, having your posh knives when really you just do this.
And we pride ourselves on tailoring our service to every customer. That every single client that we have has a service tailored to them, whether it be the knife types, the number of knives, the colors of the handles, or the frequency. Every single customer is different. There's not one.
So I guess if you had a customer that was doing a lot of cutting with something quite dense that would take a lot of edge off the blade, imagine frozen or semi-frozen fish would do that, I guess.
Yep.
They could say, well, I want you here every week. And someone that's cutting lettuce all day, for argument's sake, I'm just really sort of, that I guess that doesn't put a lot of impact on the blade. So they could say, no, just come once a month, for argument's sake. Yeah.
Exactly. So we can, if you have a budget and there's a certain amount you can afford to spend, or you perhaps don't want to spend, we can tailor a service to suit you. There's no reason why we couldn't supply you if it was a costing issue. We're very flexible in that regard.
Yeah. So I was at a shop the other day, and I went to drop off some stock. I was just passing by, and I had to grab a check off him as well. And he said, I saw his blue chopping board. It was a really thick one.
Yeah.
And but you could tell the knife that they were using had made lots of sort of incisions into the board. And obviously, with this in mind, I knew that I was doing this podcast at some point. And I says to him, that board, you ever had it resurfaced? And he was like, nope, never done it. And I was like, there was like this yellowy sort of stain in it as well, like a mold almost. Like, it probably is a mold. I just don't know what type. And I just thought to myself, like, why would you not get that resurfaced? And he was saying how expensive it was. And again, I know this sounds like a plug, but it's a basic thing. Like, that board, he's cutting fish on it. He's made lots of incisions. All the blue was coming off and touching everything that he was touching. So it is pretty genius that you guys do board resurfacing, because, again, it's an often overlooked thing. People would buy a board, use it until it's literally floppy and jagged and not looking very nice, and then they'll go buy a new board. Whereas, again, same with the knives, you're doing board resurfacing and just swapping it out as people need it.
Yeah, exactly. So we started our chopping board resurfacing service about 4 years ago, and it's been amazing. And it's been a real journey for the last 4 years with a little blip in between with COVID. But um, historically, customers just buy chopping boards, throw them away, buy new ones, and generally it's not governed by them. It's governed by a health and safety officer that does a surprise inspection, and they condemn a board, and you have to buy a new board. You don't have a choice, or your hygiene rating will go down, for argument's sake. So um, and it's a real throwaway market, throwaway society, and still trying to change the culture of that. It's very, very cost effective. It's a lot cheaper than buying new boards for a start, but it's super sustainable, and it reduces the CO2 emissions for all of these boards that are flying all the way around the world and traveling on ships. But we're trying to get our clients to go green and invest in this service, because it's a great thing for the environment. It's going to create a circular economy for the UK, and of course, it's going to save them a lot of money on these purchases as well, because they're super expensive, really, really expensive. So we see it as a no brainer for our clients.
In my mind, the UK, like many countries, is a society with a bit of a throwaway culture. You mentioned it just now, and I think we get something, it breaks, we don't bother fixing it, we just send it away and we order a new one. And one thing that interested me on your website is that I noticed that if I had if I had like a meat slicer or something else, I can just send it you, and you'll have one of your technicians look at it. And I thought to myself, there's a lot of logic there, that in a world where a lot of people, that when something's out of warranty, let's say 5-year warranty or 3-year warranty, commercial warranties are quite low for the most part. But a lot of people think, well, I've had a year's use out of it or 2 years use out of it, I'm just going to get it replaced. And I did think to myself, well, if someone like Nella is fixing it for not a lot of money, a lot cheaper than what it would be to replace it, it's just logical to actually just send it away and get it fixed, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, I don't know, some people are just so busy that it might not even come into their mind that there's a better solution to what they're currently doing. And when something's out of warranty, it breaks down, a lot of people do think, oh, we'll get a new one. And some of these equipment are really expensive, and so we're on site every week, every 2 weeks, and we just had a lot of customers asking, can you do this? Can you do that? So we've started servicing what we call light equipment. If you can pick up and walk out of a shop with it, so it could be meat slicer or a robo coop machine or a stick blender or something like that. Um, we will we can service them for you, and these machines could be 700-800 pound, if not north of 1,000,
Oh,
2,000, depending on what model you go for, and flat service fee of 100 to 150 pounds, depending on what you have and what's wrong with it, is far cheaper, far more viable thing to do. And what we actually do is we can, similar to if your car gets damaged, needs to be repaired, and you get a courtesy car, we provide loaner machines as well, so that I wouldn't expect you, Stelios, to be without your machine. You still need a fully functional machine. So we'll leave you with one while we're repairing yours, if
yeah.
that makes sense.
And when I was chatting to sort of like my producer stroke editor, she had a look at your website, and she said she was really intrigued at the fact that the business Nella does, or the business that Nella is is like the first step of sustainability. It provides sustainability before sustainability was a buzzword almost. Like, I know
Yeah.
everybody talks about it now, but it was, resharpening a knife rather than using it until it's crap and then throwing it into the recycling. Because that is essentially what was happening. You'd have a global knife, as good as it is, you'd get really frustrated with it at some point and it's going to end up in the bin. So this is giving life, whether it's a chopping board, whether it's whatever. If you can get, even if it's capital equipment, so if it's a fryer and I send you a fryer, and because it's a small one that you can walk out with, if I manage to get 2 years out of that £300 investment, that is a huge, huge amount of saving, because you're not buying new equipment all the time. And I know that there is tax benefits to buying new equipment all the time, but that still is dearer than having something fixed. So I don't know. In my mind, it seems to me that you were sustainable before it was sexy to say the word sustainable. Does that make sense? Do you know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like,
yeah. For like, look, the world's ever evolving place, and the last 5-6 years, especially since COVID, sustainability and carbon footprint, all that kind of stuff has come to the forefront. But we've always been a sustainable service. We pride ourselves on it now, but like you said, sharpening knives has always been a very sustainable service, and the board massively enhances that for us. And the boards is it has a real impact on the environment. We're resurfacing. We're up to 10,000 boards a week now, 10,000
wow,
cutting boards a week that would have all gone to landfill, and they were all single-use plastics until we turned up and started resurfacing them. So 10,000 boards every week, and we're barely scratching the sides. It's like I said, we're trying to change a culture here, and it's been really receptive and really enhanced over the last year or so. But think of all those other boards that are going to waste, and it can certainly be a much more sustainable sector in our industry for sure.
yeah, no, definitely. So I just think it's really important. I really do. I think that you know, a lot of people when they talk about sustainability, they don't even think about this stuff. So I think it's really important that you guys talk about this and doing it, because again, it's not just where did my wheats come from? Where did my bread come from? Where did this come from? No, if the equipment you use is not sustainable, what's the bloody point? And I think there's no logic in that. And I think this really reaffirms that, why be a wasteful society? Use it,
Mm.
and also I guess in sort of in chains, let's say, or groups where they have thousands of staff, knives and boards aren't going to be treated with the utmost of respect. They're busy places, even without neglect. I mean, they're busy places, they're rushing around, they're going through really hot dishwashers, whatever it is. You drop them on the floor, they get scraped on something. Things aren't going to last forever. So this means that those groups, especially, just turn up, got a fresh board, nothing to worry about, nice and easy.
Yeah, if you could split up a hospitality venue into two sections, you've got front of house, back of house. Everything we do is back of house, and back of house, it's out of sight, out of mind. If people turn a blind eye to it because they want to impress their clients.
Mm,
They want to project a certain a certain way that they run and that they're going green. And so roll the clocks back a few years. I think it was a really big thing at the time of people not using plastic straws anymore. I mean, you'd be surprised if you went to a bar in London now with a plastic straw. I'd be very surprised.
mm,
They all use these paper straws, but for a while, like you say, a chopping board, which if you think of how much plastic there is that goes into that in comparison to a small straw, um, it the saving and the waste just on one board alone is massive. And just because it was back of house and a customer wouldn't necessarily know that you're doing this, I think it's taken a while for that to catch up with the front of
mm,
house services and products. So we've certainly turned a corner, and it's been really receptive, especially the last year. And if anything, COVID has enhanced that for everyone. And it's more hygienic as well. If
mm.
you're getting
Yeah,
like you said, your opening was with the fish
yeah.
getting in the grooves and started to get a bit mouldy. So let's not forget it's very, very hygienic, and I think that's a good thing
Well,
for.
I guess the smoother the surface, the harder it is for any bacteria to thrive and grow. And I remember at the beginning of COVID reading about how bacteria sort of dies on very rough surfaces, whereas on smooth surfaces it grows because it can. And they were saying that although carpets are disgusting, which as in for the most part, carpets can be disgusting,
Mm.
but bacteria doesn't thrive there because it's so rough and they can't live and thrive. And I think that would be the same for again, repeated use, cutting boards, you've sort of pressing something on it, whether it's meat or whether it's fish. The fish minerals, they stink at the best of times, so if you've got a board that's got, marks all over it, I don't know. For me, I don't want to make this sound like a sales pitch. This is just something that I saw the other day. And if everybody's honest with themselves, they'll look at their boards and they'll see it there too, because it happens. No one treats boards with respect. No one, you just don't. Now, people are careful when they use knives, but they're not really careful when they're using a board. No one thinks, oh, I better be careful.
Yeah,
The boards. Maybe when they've just bought it, maybe. But for the
yeah,
most part, boards take abuse.
yeah, of course.
You know. But turning of talking of talking of turning a corner, you mentioned COVID. What was that like for you guys?
That was unbelievably difficult. It was, yeah. Well, firstly, it took everyone by surprise, but it was really difficult, and we're happy to be here where we are today, and what a journey it was, and now we can look back on that. It was a you know invaluable lesson learned, and um, one that will stay with us. And if anything, I know I'm very confident. I know that anything that could happen in the future, we could overcome, because it didn't get much worse than that 18 months. We went from prospering a prospering business, that was really excited into what the future holds. Like, we just started our board resurfacing service as it goes. We were only sort of in its infancy. It was about a year old, and within 2 weeks, the, we dropped 90% in business.
Wow.
For a couple of weeks, we actually went down to zero. We didn't know what the future held for us. We didn't know if, when COVID first hit, we were under the impression that everywhere was shut, and then gradually we realised that no, our butchers still operate, because they still need to provide food, supermarkets, that kind of thing. So for a good 5-6 months, we ended up operating at about 20% on for all of the food suppliers, as opposed to restaurant industry. So that got us through it. We really, really had to scale back. Furlough was a godsend, and you know, each lockdown that came did get a little bit better for us, because the culture of delivering food has changed beyond belief in the last 2 years. You'd never see a pasta traveling in a box. You'd always have your curry, you'd always have your pizza, but there was just certain food that just didn't sit right with you to get that delivered. But now, you'd be mad if you're a restaurant that didn't use, your Deliveroo, Uber Eats, and
Whatever there is.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
so that helped us through COVID as well, because these restaurants, like us, had to evolve quickly, and the ones that did, lasted the test of time, and so it was something that, yeah, it will certainly live with us, and it's nice to hopefully look at it in the rear mirror.
What do you think you sort of learned through it? Was there any challenge? Well, I guess there was lots of challenges, but what challenge sticks out to you the most, do you think?
The biggest challenge for me was, it was up and down like a yo-yo art, because you had a lockdown, then it opened, then you had another lockdown. So I think the biggest challenge was sort of going 0 to 100 overnight, and then putting the brakes back on 2 or 3 times. It was really, yeah, it was really hard to manage. It was really hard to orchestrate. It was very, very chaotic. And looking back at it, I'm not quite sure how we did it, but we just managed work day to day, tried to get through to tomorrow, and that lasted for a good 9 months to a year. And yeah, we took the time. We had a bit more time on our hands because business was reduced, operating at such a reduced level. Um, we invested in some softwares, and that could help us upscale and manage our business better as we grew again. So, if there's a silver lining to it all, I'd say the foundations of our company are actually better than they were pre-COVID.
Mm.
Before we were just trying to keep up, whereas now, we've got a solid foundation to grow on, and without COVID, we wouldn't have had the time to do that. The old saying goes, "Why change it if it's not broken?" Things were going great, and then all of a sudden, the deck of cards came tumbling down, and we had to reassess everything. So,
I
uh,
get, I
yeah,
guess pre-COVID, everyone thought they were doing everything right,
yeah,
and then, yeah, and then when COVID changes the landscape, it's like, no, no. You always, I found a lot of weaknesses in our business that I thought, well, no, no, this has got to change, and actually, COVID gives you that all those excuses for everyone to just fix every error they had, or everyone's sort of like in business. I always find that there's a million different fires, but you deal with the one that's the biggest priority.
hmm
And what COVID did was allow you to put all of them out and start fresh. And I think that's what I appreciate about COVID. Not that you can appreciate something as devastating as that across
yeah,
the board, but what I mean is that it gives you the chance to actually just wipe that board clean and say, there's no reason after this why I'm still working with issues, and I'm sure they will creep up again with every business, but I feel like you just want to deal with them now. Whereas before it was like we just kept them going in the background and think, I'll deal with them later. It's not a
yeah.
priority, whereas COVID gave everyone time to deal with that,
Yeah,
you know.
and they were super important at the time because every small decision, every slight change in your operation at the time had such a big impact because everyone had to look after the pennies, save everything, be more efficient. Just so you're right, you honed in on stuff that you just bypassed. You knew it was happening, but you didn't have the time to deal with it because, like you said, if there's a bigger pressing problem that cropped up, it's gonna join the front of the list, not the
Yeah.
back.
What I find interesting is that you said that post COVID, or well, whatever it is after the COVID, because we're still, I
Yeah,
suppose there's some remnants of it. I
fingers
don't want to,
crossed.
yeah, fingers crossed. You felt like you had stronger foundations, and that's really impressive because you come from a business that is 121 years old, which would have very strong foundations. But I guess that also means that you probably had other things that were probably not dealt with also because again it was a long standing business, and like you say, if it's not broken, why fix it?
Yeah, and we had a different perspective on the company. So before, you know, if we would get to next week and we'd sort of take each day as it comes and we'd deal with what's thrown at us, and that all the numbers historically were always moving in the right direction. So like you said, if there's only so much time you have in a day, and if there was a bigger fire elsewhere, that was what we'd attend to. And um and that's it sounds crazy, but that's what we've done for a long time. And business was growing, things were going well. And then we just had to, once we took that step back in COVID, we had to reevaluate every aspect of the way we worked. And now, there's a lot more planning foresight into day-to-day work than before. We'd be dealing with what was given to us,
Yeah.
as opposed to, you know, you know, proactively planning as opposed to just reacting all the time.
Yeah. So the landscape over the last few years has shifted tremendously with obviously COVID, and also now we've got inflation. We've also got the Russian war on Ukraine. How does this change what's going on at Nella? It has the Russian war. Has that created any other tailspins or headaches that you just didn't need?
Yeah, I mean, what a devastating scenario, for a start. It's really, really sad for things like this to still be happening in this day and age. And you'd like to think, everyone's learnt from history, right? But it has impacted us. anything we buy is way more expensive because I mentioned earlier, all of our services, we actually supply the goods. So we supply the knives, we supply the boards, and then we resurface or we sharpen them. So, we buy a lot of stock. We've always got knives and boards incoming to meet the supplies of our customers. So everything we buy has increased a lot in prices. Obviously, fuel. We've got 100 vans delivering every day, and that fuel has almost doubled. It's gone through the roof, and you know, with the goods that we're buying for the services in knives and boards, the shipping surcharges and fuel charges, and it's made things very difficult, and you don't know when you're going to get your stuff as well. We could be waiting a week, we could be waiting a month. Everything's a little bit chaotic, and we found ourselves trying to you know make sure we're heavily stocked so that we can limit the day-to-day effect that has on us. But it certainly had physical implications, and just uh, headaches and things that you didn't normally have to deal with.
Well,
It's certainly made it more difficult.
carrying more stock also affects your cash flow, especially when you're carrying more expensive stock. So if you're carrying double the amount and it's also costing you more to buy, well, that's never going to be a good thing on its own, let
Mm.
alone all the other pressures.
Yeah, you're right.
you know and I think that is also something that people don't see a lot of, that in order for you to always maintain that you've got the stock there, it is more space, more this, more that, everything just costs more. And I remember when I first got into business, a friend of mine said, don't worry about profit, worry about everything, but cash flow is king. It is the blood that makes the business run. It's what keeps the heart of the business moving. And it takes a lot for people to realize that actually, if you've got thousands of pounds worth of stock tied up, that's a cost to the business. But you wouldn't have it any other way either, because you need to keep stock moving. So it's a
Yeah,
catch-22. But I think what I'm trying to get to listeners is that all of these costs, they're a burden.
yeah. No, they are a real burden, and like you say, cash flow is king. And certainly we're spending a lot more money than we're used to spending and that we'd like to spend, but at the same time, to upkeep and service our clients, we need the goods, to do so. So it's short-term pain, but hopefully we will ride the storm, and hopefully it returns to sort of normality in sooner rather than later, and those sort of worries and strains will ease for sure.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to ask you is, what do you think you've probably learned from? Well, you're the last one in, essentially, in terms of, you, your brother, and your dad. What would you say you've learned off your dad or your brother over the years?
I've my dad's he's a go-getter. He if he believes in something, and he will do his utmost to make it a reality. A lot of people talk about things, but I would say for sure he's willing to put his cards on the table and go for it and give it a try. Now look, that does not mean that everything he's done has been a success. I'm sure he's got some stories to tell on that, but for sure, he backs himself, and he goes for it. And something like the board resurfacing service, that was a hunch from him, and we followed through with it, and it's a great service. So he works hard, and I feel like he's taught me, one, you got to work hard, but two, you do have to take the risk, and these things don't come easy. If it was supposed to be, easy, everyone would do it. So there's bumpy. It's a bumpy road. It will continue to be so. But if you keep plugging away, you'll get there. And not to rest on your laurels. There's lots of small things. It would make you laugh if you walked around with my dad in his environment of our work, because for him, the small things make a big difference. You sort out the small things, the big things take care of themselves. And he he's right, and he takes that very personally because, like you introduced us, the name's above the door, and he's very very proud of that. So we've got to obtain the high standards that he set.
Yeah. And what do you say you've probably learnt off someone like your brother? Because that's always a difficult one. You probably don't realise how much you have learnt because you're closer age, sibling wise. Does that make sense?
Do you know what? My brother initially, because he's an older brother and he was already working 3 or 4 years when I started work. In essence, my brother, when he started work, was my dad's right hand man.
Hmm.
When I started work, business obviously is always moving on through the years. I was my brother's right hand man. No disrespect to him. He just didn't have as much time. He couldn't, So in essence, it's as corny as it sounds. I almost learned everything I know from my
Hmm.
brother. Yeah, he's certainly taught me everything I know. Obviously, Dad has a, a very big impact because he taught my brother everything he knows. But yeah, I look up to him, and whatever he says to me, whatever they both say, um, I will always take it on board and try and make a decision based on their input as well.
Mm. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah. So moving away from the family business somewhat, what influences your ideas? I read books. I like reading a lot of business books. I like following business, whether it's people on Twitter or Instagram, or not, maybe not Instagram as much, but LinkedIn maybe. It's how I saw your dad. Um, what sort of influences your business decisions outside of the business, would you say?
Difficult one. I mean, look, I think someone obvious that's come to the forefront in the last few years would be sort of Elon Musk with Tesla and his SpaceX and stuff like that. For me, he's just a really interesting character, and the business journey that he's been on is quite insane, really. And he clearly firmly believes in what he's trying to achieve, and actually a successful business, and whether it be money, that comes off the back of his firm beliefs. So that's pretty inspirational in itself. If you believe in something, go after it, get it, because everything else will take care and take its course. And obviously, being a very sustainable business in Tesla with the electric car market, um, you know, I'd like to, not on that scale, but we're trying to do a good thing here as well. And so I'd say, people like him, businesses like that, they're all in inspiration to us, and hopefully, we can join the ride and help make the world a better place.
Well, I think that's the goal, isn't it? I remember once seeing a tweet and it said, "Name one business that does nothing, that doesn't impact the natural landscape." And I remember this guy was from the oil industry, because I think a lot of people were knocking BP at the time. It was good 10 years ago, and a lot of people were knocking BP for obvious reason. And he was saying, name one business that you can run, one that doesn't affect anything. And I remember all the tweets, and there wasn't one. There just
Mm.
wasn't one. But I think what you're trying to do is you understand that your materials have impacted the economy or planet in some way, but now let's use them like 100 times longer
Yeah,
and get every single ounce of life out of it before it then heads to the bin,
yeah,
or at least remodeling or whatever, research. And I guess knives, the metal will always have some value. Boards, not so much, I guess. Well, maybe they do, maybe they get recycled, remade
yeah, yeah,
into
exactly.
pellets or, yeah.
Decent yeah.
Yeah. So it's just understanding that you are literally, I don't think there's many businesses that can say, we don't affect anything. And I just don't think you can. You can't. Everything means you've got to move soil or ground. But what you're saying is, we will use that knife until there's nothing left on it and it can't be used anymore. And then we'll go send it away to get it, whatever, melted down. And I think that's quite laudable. I really do. I think that if people do the economics, they will see that it's logical. And if they then want to use their heart or their head instead of their head, shall I say, then they're doing something sustainable. But if they wanted to actually run the numbers, they'll see there's a strong use case there, isn't there?
Yeah. It's not to move away from the sustainability helping the environment, but
Yeah,
it's a very, very cost effective service.
yeah,
If the boards to buy a board these days, because we're talking about our costs going up with the boards and the knives, it's the same for the end user. We're a middleman, and the costs have gone through the roof. So if you could save 65-70% on buying a new board that you have to buy because health and safety have forced you to, or you're opening a new restaurant and you've got to have them, it's a no-brainer to save the money as well. Every pound helps, right?
I think it's a bit like pest control. You know what? Could I go buy the baits and stuff like that and do it myself? Probably. Can I be bothered? Definitely not. Yeah, and I think it's just pay someone else to do it. Everything's turning up every week, whatever it is, whatever the agreed term is, and the job's done right. I ain't, I could do all of it, but I don't want to. And I think that's the difference. And I think most businesses will be figuring that out. Steph, is there anything I should have mentioned that I've completely forgot?
No, we mentioned my uncle earlier, Emilio.
Yeah, that's it.
A shout out to him because he retired 5 years ago. Actually, I think 5 years.
How many years did he work for you guys?
Oh, he's my dad's older brother. He would have started work when he was probably 15, 16, similar age. But he's done a good 35, 40 year stint with us. So, we wouldn't be here today without him as well. And
what's he doing these days? Is he relaxing, playing golf, putting his feet up? What's he doing?
Yeah, all of the above. And he's God, I've lost count. He's got a lot of grandchildren now. He's got 7 or 8 grandchildren. So good luck to him. And he's enjoying himself in different ways. But he worked hard. He worked hard for us to get where we are today as well.
I think I'm definitely envious of the fact that you guys have built a business, all of you, all the generations before you. And yes, there must have been struggles having families involved. We mentioned on the phone when we spoke a couple of weeks ago that, if someone's coming around for dinner for a birthday or Sunday dinner or whatever, like you end up talking knives or boards. It just happens, and I guess that does grate on people as well to some degree, especially on the people that probably aren't directly involved with the business, like wives or mums and so on. So I think that, well, also your sister's husbands may even feel like that as well. So it's like, oh, here we go again, knives, So I guess it's a big, like I said, I think I said to a friend of mine always says, look, we will talk about it at the table because this is what made the table. This is what put the food on the table. But at the same time, I can understand the stresses of a family business. I didn't make it through a family business. I'm completely honest about that. But I get on better with my family now, because of that, because I find that if you're too different, you've just got to go do your own thing. You can't sit there being resentful and angry and stressed, And so I do understand, but I'm really envious of the fact that you have built that business, and maybe I could learn from that, and maybe one day my kids will be involved in the business. Although it terrifies me massively, the thought of my 2 boys coming in and saying, "Dad, let's do this, this, and this." I couldn't cope with that at the moment, but maybe it's something that I could grow into. And your business seems like a good model for that because you've had uncles involved, cousins involved, brothers and sisters involved, and again, I'm sure there's been some stresses, but it's also been quite relatively good on the whole, but massively good on the whole too, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has, and every single person, every family member, certainly played their part in the journey along the way. And yeah, you can have some crosswords, but I sort of touched on it with my brother earlier. You just got to remember it's coming from a good place, and it's to benefit everyone. There's nothing more to that. When you step back and realize that you can move on from it. It's not a personal thing. You're not, you might have a crossword, but you never, for me, we're not going to fall out over it because he wants what's best for us, and I want what's best for us. So, you generally, you find it somewhere along the way. And, it's funny you're talking about the dinner table, because if we couldn't talk about boards and knives, honestly, I don't know what we'd talk about at dinner, as much as my mum.
Probably football, no?
Well, yeah, exactly. You'd be. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's been a big part of our lives, and for us, it's very much a life. It's not a job. It's it's what we know. It's the only thing we know. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Mate, thank you so much for your time today. You're an absolute legend. And, lots of love from my family to yours. And, hopefully we'll get to meet in face-to-face at some point.
Yeah, thanks, Stelios. No, same to you. Vice versa. Thanks for inviting us on. And, it's been a pleasure.
Massive shout out to Stefano Nella for coming on the Ceres podcast. As you can hear from this, I'm a big fan of Nella Cutlery Services and everything they're doing. I actually do believe that everyone in hospitality should be using them for their knives and boards. Why mess around buying them when you can just have a subscription and they just keep bringing you fresh knives or clean boards? I wouldn't mess around, to be honest. To follow Nella Cutlery, follow all the links in our show notes. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and on social media. If you like this episode, then chances are your friends will too. To see what we've been up to and how any of our solutions can help you, visit wilderceres.com. And be sure to join our mailing list, because that's where the offers come, that's where you hear everything first.